The moment I discovered the betrayal, I knew lies would no longer define my life or determine my future. My name is Kurt Hoffman, and I'm 33 years old. Each morning I wake at 5 to run my contracting business in Ohio, measuring twice and cutting once, both wood and problems. My wife Caroline, the woman I built a life with for 8 years, stood in our kitchen that night, designer suitcase at her feet, explaining how this investment genius Graham Sterling offered her everything I couldn't. My fingers trembled against the counter as she described their plans while $42,000 had already disappeared from our accounts. Some men might have raged, but I've always believed justice requires a steady hand and documented evidence. The kind that holds up in court when people mistake your kindness for weakness. I won't be the victim in someone else's story of greed. Before I go any further, let me know in the comments where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow I will share a story you don't want to miss. But let me start from the beginning. Thursday evening had that golden quality to it, the kind where sunlight slants through kitchen windows and turns ordinary moments into something worth remembering. I'd finished a job early, installing custom cabinetry for a retired couple who'd saved 30 years for their dream kitchen. Seeing their faces when the last drawer slid perfectly into place had put me in a good mood. Caroline had been working late more often these past few weeks. Marketing strategy sessions, she'd said. And I thought I'd surprise her with dinner. I'd picked up fresh salmon from that market she liked. The one that charged twice what it should but wrapped everything in fancy brown paper. I was searing it in the cast iron pan her parents had given us as a wedding gift, perfectly seasoned from years of Sunday dinners. The potatoes were already done, roasted with rosemary from the little herb garden I'd built on our back deck. The garage door hummed open around 7. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and smiled, ready to see my wife's face light up at the unexpected gesture. "Something smells amazing," Caroline called out, but her voice had a strange pitch to it, higher than normal, rehearsed. I turned from the stove as she walked in, and immediately knew something was off. Caroline wore a sleek black dress I didn't recognize, and heels too impractical for a day at the office. Her makeup was flawless, her hair freshly styled, not the look of someone who'd spent the day hunched over marketing spreadsheets. "Thought I'd surprise you," I said, gesturing to the stove. "Rough day?" She didn't meet my eyes. "We need to talk." My hand hovered over the salmon. I switched off the burner and turned to face her fully. "What's going on?" She set her purse on the counter, not in its usual spot by the door, and only then did I notice the suitcase behind her in the hallway. Large, expensive-looking, packed. "I've made a decision," Caroline said, straightening her shoulders. "I'm leaving. Tonight." The words hung in the kitchen air, suspended between us like smoke. I leaned back against the counter, steadying myself. "Leaving where?" My voice sounded calmer than I felt. "Miami, with Graham." She said it simply, as if mentioning she was picking up dry cleaning. "Graham." I repeated the name, searching my memory. "Who the hell is Graham?" "Graham Sterling. I met him through a business forum 3 months ago." Caroline's fingers toyed with her necklace, a nervous habit I'd always found endearing. Now it just seemed calculating. "He sees my potential. He's investing in me." I set the dish towel down precisely on the counter. 3 months ago. "He runs Sterling Ventures. He's doing things, Kurt, big things." Something like pity flashed across her face. "Not that you'd understand." My hands gripped the edge of the counter. "Try me." "That's the problem, you never try." Caroline's voice hardened. "You're content with your little business, your little house, your little life. Graham says I deserve more." I looked at the dinner I'd prepared, steam still rising from the potatoes. "And Graham knows what you deserve after 3 months? He knows I'm suffocating here. With you." She glanced around our kitchen, the one I'd renovated myself, installing the farmhouse sink she'd fallen in love with at a design show. "You play so small, Kurt. You always have." "Small keeps the mortgage paid," I replied, a strange coldness spreading through my chest. "Small built everything we have." She laughed, actually laughed. "What we have isn't enough. Graham's flying me to Miami tonight. We're looking at waterfront properties tomorrow." Something clicked in my mind. Is that what the extra withdrawals were for? House hunting? Her chin lifted slightly. I moved what's mine. $42,000 from our joint savings isn't yours, I said. the coldness in my chest turning to ice. And the money from the business account? That definitely isn't yours. Call it an advance on the life I deserve, Caroline said, eyes flashing. Graham will replace it 10 times over with our first investment return. I took a step toward her. That's not how this works. You can't just... I already did. She cut me off. Graham says you'll try to control me with money. That's what small men do. It's not control, Caroline, it's theft. It's freedom. She grabbed her purse. I'm not asking permission. Then don't ask for forgiveness when this falls apart, I said, my voice hardening. Because theft has consequences. Her face flushed. The only consequence is I finally get to live. Without limits. Without you holding me back. She stormed past me, grabbed the suitcase handle, and paused at the door. For a moment, I thought I saw hesitation in her eyes. Graham's waiting, she said, and then she was gone. I stood in the silent kitchen, listening to her car start and pull away. The salmon continued to steam on the stove. I didn't move to save it. Hours later, after the food had gone cold and been thrown away, I sat at our desktop computer. I logged into our joint bank account first. The balance, $212.37. Last month it had been over $40,000, our emergency fund, vacation savings, and the start of what we'd planned as a down payment for a bigger house. I clicked through to our home equity line of credit, maxed out. $75,000 gone. Then I accessed my business account, the one Caroline had insisted on having her name on, just in case something happened to me. The operating funds for next month's payroll were gone. All of it. I leaned back in my chair as the full picture became clear. This wasn't just betrayal. It was premeditated robbery. I didn't sleep. At 4:30 a.m. I was already dressed and waiting for the banks to open. I stared at my coffee, watching steam curl into the pre-dawn kitchen. The emptiness of the house seemed to echo around me. 5 o'clock. I picked up my phone. National Bank Customer Service, this is Teresa speaking. My name is Kurt Hoffman. I need to freeze my joint accounts immediately. My voice sounded mechanical even to me. Account ending in 4371 and the home equity line ending in 8902. Sir, I'll need to verify some information. Teresa's voice softened slightly. May I ask why you're freezing the accounts? I hesitated. Unauthorized withdrawals by the joint account holder. There was a pause. I understand, sir. We can place a temporary freeze while you file a formal dispute. By 6:30, I'd called every financial institution we dealt with. Cards frozen. Accounts locked. By 7, I was on the phone with Fiona Kincaid's office leaving an urgent message. Her assistant called back at 8:15. Mr. Hoffman, Ms. Kincaid can see you at 3 today. Tell her I'll be there. I drove to my workshop in the industrial park where I kept my contracting business. The place smelled of sawdust and varnish. Honest smells. I unlocked my office and fired up the computer. For the next 4 hours, I printed everything. Bank statements, credit card bills, investment account summaries, every financial document Caroline might have accessed in the last 6 months. I grabbed a legal pad and started a timeline. First withdrawal, $5,000 from savings 3 months ago, right when she claimed to have met Graham. Next, $10,000 from our joint account labeled Angel Investment Opportunity. Then $12,000. Then $15,000 from the HELOC. Each withdrawal larger than the last, like Caroline was testing boundaries. The business account hit was the worst. $32,450 transferred to a crypto exchange 2 days ago. Money earmarked for my crew's paychecks and material orders. I remember watching my dad build houses when I was a kid. He'd check his level constantly. Measure twice, cut once, he'd say. I'd always lived by that. Caroline knew it too. She knew exactly what she was cutting away. At 2:45, I parked outside the brick building downtown where Fiona kept her practice. The folder of documents weighed heavy in my hands as I rode the elevator to the 4th floor. Fiona greeted me with a firm handshake. Mid-40s, sharp blue suit. No-nonsense eyes that took in my appearance and the thick folder without comment. Tell me what happened, she said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. I laid out the timeline. Caroline's announcement. the pattern of withdrawals, everything she'd said about Graham Sterling. Fiona listened without interruption, occasionally making notes. When I finished, she leaned forward. "Kurt, what you're describing is textbook marital waste," she said. "When a spouse deliberately dissipates shared assets prior to separation, especially to benefit a third party, the court takes a very dim view. Can I get any of it back?" "That depends." Fiona opened the folder, scanning the bank statements. "We'll file for divorce immediately, citing abandonment and dissipation of marital assets. We'll request temporary orders to prevent further withdrawals and establish your sole access to remaining accounts." She looked up at me. "What concerns me most is the business account. Has Caroline ever been involved in your company operations?" "She did some bookkeeping when we first started. I added her to the account in case something happened to me." "And this Graham Sterling, do you have any information about him beyond what Caroline told you?" I shook my head. "Just that he runs something called Sterling Ventures and is in Miami." Fiona made another note. "We need to find out who he is. These transfers to crypto exchanges are concerning. They could be legitimate, but they could also indicate something more problematic." When I left Fiona's office, the sky had darkened to slate gray. The first drops of rain hit my windshield as I pulled away from the curb. My phone rang just as I pulled into my driveway. "Abby." "Hey," I answered. "You sound terrible," my sister said bluntly. "I'm coming over." 20 minutes later, Abby was sitting at my kitchen table, her nurse's scrubs wrinkled from a 12-hour shift. She listened as I summarized everything. "That calculating bitch," she muttered when I finished. "I never trusted her." "You never said anything. Would you have listened?" She gave me a sad smile. "What's the plan now?" I showed her the folder of documents and explained Fiona's strategy. "You know who you should talk to?" Abby said suddenly. "Nick Whitaker. Remember him from high school? He does cyber forensics consulting now." "Nick? The guy who hacked the school announcements senior year?" "The very same. He helped the hospital trace a ransomware attempt last year. He's good, Kurt. If anyone can find out who this Graham Sterling really is, it's Nick." I nodded slowly. "Do you have his number?" As Abby searched her phone contacts, I stared out at the rain now coming down in sheets. My phone buzzed with a text from Fiona. "Kurt, check your credit report ASAP. If Caroline tied your name to any fraudulent account, she didn't just break your heart, she broke the law." I set the phone down, feeling the weight of everything pressing in. The rain hammered against the windows, as if nature itself was responding to the storm building inside me. How deep did Caroline's deception go? I was about to find out. I woke before dawn on Sunday, my mind racing. After firing off a text to Nick, I headed to my workshop behind the house. I'd spent most of Friday dealing with credit freezes and bank alerts after discovering Caroline had opened a margin account using my social security number. The betrayal kept finding new depths. By 9, my workbench was cleared off, coffee was brewing, and I'd pulled in the spare monitor from the office. Nick arrived with a backpack full of equipment, his hair disheveled like he'd been up all night. "Thanks for coming," I said, taking his coat. "Wouldn't miss it. I've been running preliminary searches since Abby called." He unpacked 2 laptops and a tangle of cables. "Let's see what Mr. Sterling's digital footprint looks like." For the next hour, Nick typed furiously while explaining what he was doing. I watched as he navigated through databases and forums I'd never heard of, occasionally pausing to jot notes. "Sterling Ventures," Nick muttered, turning the screen toward me. "Impressive website, right? Except it was registered 3 months ago through a domain proxy service." The site showed gleaming skyscrapers and stock photos of people in suits shaking hands. A banner proclaimed, "Building tomorrow's wealth today." 3 months, I repeated. That's when Caroline started mentioning online business forums. Nick nodded. The site has 0 backlinks from legitimate finance sites. No SEC filings under that name. And check this out. He pulled up another screen. Silverline Capital. Different name, nearly identical layout. Registered 5 months before Sterling Ventures, abandoned 2 months ago. My stomach tightened. So what are we looking at? Shell companies. Nick opened another window showing financial records. I found connections to at least 4 crypto wallets that received large transfers, then immediately split the funds across dozens of smaller accounts. Classic laundering technique. I sank into my chair, hands gripping my coffee mug. I'd expected something bad, but this was beyond personal betrayal. This was organized fraud. Your wife didn't just run off with some rich guy, Nick said, his voice gentle but firm. She's involved with someone who creates fake businesses and moves money through untraceable channels. A con man, I said flatly. Most likely. There are 3 other aliases I've connected to these same patterns: Jason Gould, Martin Silverman, and Alexander Banks. The names meant nothing to me, but the pattern was clear. Have you told Fiona about this? Sent her the preliminary findings this morning. She wants everything documented for... My phone buzzed. Caroline's name flashed on the screen. Nick raised an eyebrow. You going to take that? I hesitated, then pressed the green button. Hello? Kurt. Caroline's voice was bright, beach sounds and clinking glasses in the background. I was just thinking about you. That's a change, I said, keeping my voice even. She laughed, the sound both familiar and alien now. Don't be bitter, honey. I'm calling to check if you've thought about what I said. Graham is meeting with his investors tomorrow, and there's still room for you to get involved. Nick motioned silently, making a recording gesture. I nodded and put the phone on speaker. Get involved how? I asked. Graham can turn the little you have left into something real. He feels bad about how things happened and wants to make it right. By taking more of my money? Caroline's voice hardened. God, you're still so small-minded. This is why I had to leave. Graham sees potential. You just see problems. I see someone who stole from me, I said quietly. I moved what's rightfully mine to secure our future, she snapped. Graham will replace every cent, twice over. We'll be on a yacht by summer while you're still hammering nails for pennies. I thought of the fake websites, the shell companies, the laundered money. I thought of our 15 years together reduced to this conversation. I don't need a yacht, Caroline, I said, my voice low and controlled. I need all you took from me back. She laughed again, this time with an edge. Good luck with that. You always were stubborn. Call me when you're ready to stop being petty. The line went dead. Nick and I sat in silence for a moment. Got it all, he said finally, tapping his computer. Audio in the trace. She's calling from Miami Beach, using a new phone. I nodded, trying to process the cold calculation in her voice. Kurt, Nick said, leaning forward. I have an idea. What if Graham met another investor? Someone with deeper pockets than yours? What do you mean? Nick grinned. We create Robert Lang, silent partner, looking to expand his portfolio. Word reaches Graham that Lang is interested in Sterling Ventures, with $250,000 ready to move. I frowned. How would that help? It draws him out, gets him to present real documents, make specific claims we can document. If he's running a scam, he'll tailor his pitch to what he thinks Lang wants to hear. Nick typed rapidly, creating a new document. We build Lang a backstory, a digital footprint, even a simple website for his family office. By evening, Robert Lang had emerged, a semi-retired manufacturing executive with moderate tech skills, a preference for high-yield investments, and a digital history stretching back 6 weeks. Just enough to seem legitimate to someone not looking too deeply. Nick closed his laptop with satisfaction. If he's half as greedy as I think, he'll take the bait within weeks. I nodded grimly, staring at the fake investor profile we'd created. For the first time since Caroline walked out, I felt something other than anger or hurt. I felt focused, ready for the hunt. 2 weeks crawled by like a wounded animal. I spent my days at job sites, measuring twice and cutting once, finding comfort in the predictable physics of wood and nail. The nights were harder, alone in a house built for 2, surrounded by echoes of a life that no longer existed. I was installing kitchen cabinets when Nick's call came through. He bit, Nick said without preamble. Graham Sterling just responded to Lang's inquiry email. Wants to set up a meeting next week in Columbus. My hand tightened around my phone. You're sure it's him? Same writing style, same pitch language as the materials Caroline forwarded you. He's offering our fictional Mr. Lang preferred shares in the Sterling Ventures Expansion Fund, whatever that means. I stepped away from the half-finished kitchen, lowering my voice though no one was around to hear. What's the next move? I've replied as Lang, expressing interest but requesting an in-person meeting. Mentioned his commitment to thorough due diligence before transferring the $250,000. Think he'll show? For $250,000? He'll be there with bells on, Nick said. I'm sending you the email thread. Forward it to Fiona immediately. I called Fiona from my truck, the engine still running. This is exactly what we needed, she said after I explained the situation. I have a contact at the State Fraud Division. Investigator named Hargrove. If Graham Sterling is operating an investment scam across state lines, it becomes a federal issue, I finished. Precisely. Let me make some calls. Keep Lang responsive but hesitant. We need Sterling committed to this meeting. Later that afternoon, I met Fiona at her office. She slid divorce papers across her desk. I've drafted the petition based on abandonment and financial misconduct, she said, her voice businesslike. We're requesting exclusive use of the marital residence, full separation of business assets, and no alimony based on her actions. The papers felt heavier than they should have. I remembered standing across from Caroline at the courthouse, both of us smiling as we signed the marriage license. Now I was signing its death certificate. What about the money she took? I asked. We've documented $42,700 in unauthorized transfers from joint accounts, plus the attempted use of your social security number for margin trading. The court will likely consider this marital waste and identity fraud. I signed where Fiona indicated, each signature closing a chapter of my life. The investigator is on board, Fiona added. He'll have plainclothes officers at the cafe when Sterling arrives. You'll need to stay completely clear. Watch from a distance if you must, but don't engage. I understand. That night, my phone lit up at 11:37 p.m. Caroline's name. My thumb hovered over the decline button, but Nick's voice echoed in my head. Document everything. Hello? I answered, hitting the recording button. Court. Her voice was slurred, music thumping in the background. I'm at this amazing club and just thought of you sitting in that boring house. I said nothing, letting the silence draw her out. Graham says, she giggled. Graham says not to worry about the divorce papers. He's handling everything. His lawyer says you've got nothing on me. Is that right? I kept my tone neutral. We're getting married on his yacht next month, isn't that something? Another giggle. You could have had everything if you weren't so small time. Caroline, you're drunk. And you're still boring, she spat, suddenly vicious. Graham's invested our money, my money, and it's already tripled. Tripled. You and your little lawyer can't touch us. I thought of Graham in handcuffs, of Caroline's face when she realized her millionaire was a fraud. Get some sleep, Caroline. Don't tell me what to. I ended the call. The morning of the meeting, I parked across from the cafe where Graham would meet our fictional investor. My hands were steady, but my heart hammered against my ribs. Fiona stood beside a newspaper kiosk, pretending to browse headlines. Two plainclothes officers sat at outdoor tables nursing coffees. The state fraud investigator Hargrove waited inside. At exactly 10:15 a.m., a silver rental car pulled up. Graham Sterling stepped out. Tall, tan, wearing an expensive-looking linen blazer that didn't quite fit right across the shoulders. Just as Caroline had described him. Just as shallow as I'd imagined. He straightened his collar, checked his reflection in the car window, and strode confidently toward the cafe door. I watched him shake hands with the investigator, posing as Lang, and sit down. Documents appeared from his leather portfolio. Smiles were exchanged, and then, with a slight nod from Hargrove, the officers moved in. The confusion on Graham's face would have been comical if the situation weren't so serious. Badges appeared. Rights were read. The leather portfolio was sealed in an evidence bag. Within minutes, Graham Sterling's hands were cuffed behind his back, his linen blazer wrinkling as officers guided him to an unmarked car. I exhaled slowly, a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding for weeks. Fiona appeared at my window. We've got him, she said, her usual composure breaking into a small smile. Unlicensed securities, wire fraud, identity theft. The works. Then her expression sobered. But don't celebrate yet. Con men always have one more move. 4 days after Graham's arrest, I was standing in my kitchen making coffee when my phone buzzed. Fiona's name lit up the screen. "Kurt," she said, her voice tight. "Turn on Channel 6. I grabbed the remote and flicked on the small TV mounted under the cabinet. A blonde reporter stood outside the county courthouse, where alleged investment fraudster Graham Sterling was granted bail this morning. Sources tell us Sterling was being transferred to county lockup when he complained of chest pains. During the subsequent hospital transfer, Sterling reportedly disappeared. Authorities are now conducting a manhunt for the suspected conman who is accused of defrauding multiple victims across 3 states. The coffee mug nearly slipped from my hand. He's gone? How the hell? His attorney pulled strings with a sympathetic judge, Fiona cut in, posted a $200,000 bond that I'm guessing will be forfeited. The chest pain routine is textbook. The moment they unhooked him from the monitors, he walked right out a service entrance. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. So he just gets away? After everything? There's a warrant out. They'll find him eventually. Fiona hesitated, but I'm afraid that's not all. I've just been served with papers. Caroline has filed for emergency spousal support and a protective order against you. My mind went blank. A what? She's claiming you've been threatening her, that you were financially controlling throughout the marriage, and that you've cut her off from all resources as punishment. That's insane. She emptied our accounts. She left me. I know that. But her new attorney, a shark named Dawson, has painted you as some kind of monster. The filing claims you've sent threatening texts, that you've stalked her online, and that you orchestrated Graham's arrest out of jealousy. My hands started to shake. None of that is true. Truth takes time to prove, Kurt. Meanwhile, Judge Landry granted a temporary restraining order. You can't be in the house when Caroline returns. You can't contact her. The room seemed to spin. She stole from me and I'm being punished? It's temporary, Fiona insisted. The hearing is in 2 weeks. We'll present our evidence then, but for now I'm homeless. I'm sorry. You need to gather some essentials and vacate the property by 6 p.m. She's flying back tonight. I hung up and stared at the half-made coffee, steam still rising from the pot. All our work, all our planning, and I was the one being forced out. I grabbed a duffel bag from the closet and started throwing in clothes, toiletries, work documents. My fingers brushed against the framed photo on my nightstand. Caroline and me on our honeymoon in Sanibel Island. I'd forgotten it was still there. I turned it face down and kept packing. Abby answered her door before I even knocked, arms already open. Fiona called me, she said, pulling me into a hug. You stay as long as you need. I dropped my bag in her spare room, really just a converted dining nook with a futon. I don't understand how this happened. We had him. We had evidence. Abby's eyes flashed with anger. Because people like Caroline and Graham are professional victims. They break the rules, then cry when consequences catch up. That night I lay on Abby's uncomfortable futon, staring at the ceiling fan rotating slowly above me. The injustice burned in my chest. First Caroline took my money, then my peace, now my home. And somewhere Graham was free, probably plotting his next scam. My phone chimed. A text from Caroline. I'm back in my house. Hope your sister's couch is comfortable. I almost threw the phone across the room. Instead, I forwarded it to Fiona with, more evidence of harassment? Fiona replied immediately, save everything. Don't respond. Around midnight, Abby brought me a beer and sat on the edge of the futon. You're thinking too loud, she said. I can hear it from my bedroom. Sorry. Talk to me. I took a long swig. It's the same pattern. Caroline manipulated me throughout our marriage. When that stopped working, she moved on to manipulating Graham. Now she's manipulating the court. She doesn't just want money, Abby said quietly. She wants power. Exactly. I sat up. She needs to control the narrative, make herself the victim, make me the villain. So what are you going to do? I thought of the bank statements, the recorded calls, the transfer records. If paper built this lie, paper will destroy it. Rain started pattering against the window, matching my mood. Abby squeezed my shoulder and left me alone with my thoughts. I stared out at the darkness, watching raindrops track down the glass like tears. 2 weeks. 2 weeks until the hearing that could either restore what was mine or strip it away permanently. 2 weeks to prove that the truth mattered more than a well-crafted lie. 7 days. That's how long I waited, pacing Abby's small apartment, sleeping on her lumpy futon, and counting the minutes until I could reclaim what was mine. Each morning I'd wake before dawn, shower quickly, and head to job sites, grateful that work kept my hands busy while my life hung in the balance. "You look like hell," Nick said, sliding into the booth across from me at Westside Diner. It was our third meeting that week, this time over greasy breakfast plates that neither of us touched. "Feel worse," I admitted. "Any progress?" Nick's eyes lit up as he pulled out his tablet. "Better than progress. I've got a digital smoking gun." He turned the screen toward me. At first glance, it was just a string of text messages between Caroline and Graham. Conversations I'd never seen before. "These were deleted," Nick explained, scrolling through the recovered thread. "Caroline thought emptying the trash folder meant they were gone. Rookie mistake." I leaned forward, reading messages dated weeks before she'd left. My stomach clenched. "Caroline, Kurt's working late again. I moved another 5K today." Graham, "Perfect princess. Keep it slow, keep it steady. He won't notice until we're gone." Caroline, "What if he checks the statements?" Graham, "He won't. Men like him trust too much. That's why they lose." The messages continued, dozens of them, detailing exactly how Caroline had systematically drained our accounts, how Graham had coached her on avoiding detection, even ways to divert business funds without triggering alerts. "There's more," Nick said, swiping to another screen. "She helped him dodge KYC verification, know your customer banking protocols. That's explicitly illegal." I remembered those nights when I'd come home exhausted, when Caroline had been hunched over her laptop, quickly closing it as I walked in. I'd thought she was planning a surprise. In a way, she was. "God, I was blind," I whispered. Nick's face softened. "No, you were trusting. Different thing." I ran my hand over my face. "Will this be enough?" "Fiona thinks so. I sent her everything this morning." These messages prove Caroline wasn't some innocent bystander. She actively participated in financial fraud targeting you specifically. When I stepped into Fiona's office later that day, she was surrounded by stacks of paper, yellow highlighter in hand. She looked up and actually smiled, a rare sight these last few weeks. "Good timing," she said. "I've just finished our counterstrike." She walked me through the strategy: identity theft charges, marital waste documentation, and now, evidence of conspiracy. The texts Nick recovered were the final piece. "The restraining order was built on a foundation of lies," Fiona said, tapping her pen against the desk. "Once we expose those lies, everything else Caroline's claiming collapses." "What about Graham?" "The state investigator is ready to testify about the securities fraud investigation. He'll confirm Caroline's knowing participation in the scheme." The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I stood in Abby's kitchen at 3 a.m. staring out at the streetlights. Every recovered message played in my head, Caroline's calculated betrayal laid bare in her own words. Strange as it sounds, I felt something like relief alongside the hurt. Those messages freed me from any lingering doubt or guilt. They were proof that I hadn't failed her. She had chosen this path deliberately, eyes wide open. Morning came too quickly and not soon enough. I dressed carefully, clean work boots, pressed jeans, and my contractor's jacket with my company logo. Not to impress the court, but to remind myself who I was: a builder, someone who created things honestly, with his hands. The courthouse hallway was cold and echoing. Fiona met me at the entrance, briefcase in hand, her navy suit as crisp as her expression. "Ready?" she asked. More than ready. Caroline was already inside with her attorney, a silver-haired man in an expensive suit. She'd dressed for sympathy: minimal makeup, conservative blouse, hair pulled back. Our eyes met briefly. I expected to see defiance, but what flashed across her face was something closer to panic. Judge Landry entered and the hearing began. Caroline's attorney went first, painting me as controlling and vindictive. Then came Fiona's methodical dismantling of their case. She presented bank records, recovered texts, transfer documentation, building a clear timeline of deliberate theft. The fraud investigator testified next, explaining how Caroline had knowingly facilitated unregistered securities transactions. Mrs. Hoffman wasn't duped, he stated flatly. She was an active participant in Mr. Sterling's scheme using funds and identification obtained from her husband without consent. I watched Caroline throughout his testimony. Her posture changed, shoulders hunching, fingers fidgeting with her watch. The mask was slipping. When the judge finally spoke, her tone had shifted from the caution of 2 weeks ago to something harder. I'm rescinding the temporary restraining order, effective immediately. Mr. Hoffman will have exclusive use of the marital home pending final divorce proceedings. Furthermore, Mrs. Hoffman is barred from accessing any financial accounts bearing Mr. Hoffman's name or business. She looked directly at Caroline. Evidence suggests serious financial misconduct that will be considered in the final property division. Relief washed through me like a physical wave. Outside the courtroom, Caroline caught up to me in the hallway. Her lawyer was already gone, probably sensing the shifting winds. "Kurt," she whispered, her voice tight. "You think you've won? You haven't seen desperate yet." 2 days later, I was at a job site, checking the foundation work on a 3-bedroom ranch when my phone buzzed in my pocket. Nick's name flashed on the screen. "Got a minute?" His voice had that tight, controlled excitement I'd come to recognize. I stepped away from the concrete forms, moving toward my truck. "What's up?" I found him. Nick didn't need to specify who. Graham Sterling, or should I say, Gregory Stiles. That's his real name. My hand tightened around the phone. "You're sure?" 100%. He's in Tampa using his actual ID for once. Probably thinks no one connects Gregory Stiles to Graham Sterling. "How did you find him?" Nick's laugh was short. "Vanity. The guy may change identities, but he keeps the same email pattern for his food delivery apps. I set up alerts on variations of his username patterns after he skipped town. Got a hit this morning, pizza delivery to a short-term rental in Tampa." I leaned against my truck, the metal still cool in the morning air. "Does Fiona know?" "Calling her next, but I wanted you to hear it first." "Thank you," I said, meaning it more than he could know. "For everything." An hour later, I was sitting in Fiona's office as she spoke with the state investigator on speakerphone. I watched her efficient movements, the precise way she handled each piece of information. "The address is confirmed," she said. "Rental agreement signed 3 days ago under Gregory Stiles. Payment method matches patterns from previous aliases." The investigator's voice crackled through the phone. "We've contacted Tampa PD and the Regional Fraud Task Force. They're setting up surveillance now." "What about the active warrants?" Fiona asked. "Still valid. Bond violation alone would be enough, but with the interstate flight charges added, he's looking at significant time." After the call ended, Fiona looked at me. "This could move quickly. Are you prepared for that?" I nodded. "I've been prepared since the night Caroline walked out." That afternoon, I had to be at the courthouse for a scheduled mediation session. Caroline was already there when I arrived, sitting alone in the hallway. She looked thinner, her designer clothes from weeks ago replaced by something simpler, less confident. She stood when she saw me. "Kurt." I stopped, keeping a careful distance. "The mediator's waiting." "Wait," she said, her voice cracking. "Can we talk, just for a minute?" "About?" "About us." Her eyes welled with tears I once would have believed. "Graham, he manipulated me. I see that now. The texts Nick found tell a different story." My voice stayed level. "People make mistakes." She stepped closer. "Just take me back." I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman I'd built a life with, who'd dismantled it piece by piece. For a fleeting moment, I remembered how it felt to love her, the weight of that history pulling like an undertow. "No," I said simply. Her expression hardened, then softened again, cycling through tactics. "Kurt, please, I have nowhere to go." "You didn't trip into betrayal, Caroline." The words came out measured, calm. "You planned it." I planned the exit. The mediator called us in before she could respond. The session was brief and cold, both sides adhering to the boundaries the judge had established. Caroline's attorney advised her to accept the preliminary terms, likely knowing how the evidence would play in court. I was driving home when my phone buzzed with a text from Fiona. "Got him. My fingers trembled slightly as I pulled to the side of the road to read the follow-up message. Gregory Stiles in custody in Tampa. Arrested outside mailbox store. Multiple IDs and prepaid phones in possession. I sat there, engine idling, as something tight and painful in my chest finally began to unwind. It wasn't joy or triumph. Nothing so simple. It was the quiet release that comes when a weight you've carried for so long suddenly lifts. I gripped the steering wheel, closed my eyes, and whispered words I didn't know I needed to say until that moment. Justice isn't revenge. It's balance restored. The courtroom felt different 6 weeks later. Maybe it was the early spring light filtering through the high windows. Or maybe it was me, standing straighter, breathing easier. I sat beside Fiona at the polished table as the judge reviewed our final divorce decree, Caroline and her attorney across the aisle. All terms appear to be in order, the judge said, scanning the document. Mr. and Mrs. Hoffman, are you both in agreement with the settlement as presented? I nodded. Yes, Your Honor. Caroline's yes was barely audible. The judge continued through the formalities, but I was focused on the document in front of me. The pages that would officially end my marriage and begin the rest of my life. Fiona had negotiated exactly what we'd aimed for. I kept the house that I'd put the down payment on before we were married. My business remained untouched. My credit would take time to rebuild, but the court acknowledged the identity theft and financial fraud, ordering Caroline to adhere to a structured repayment plan for the damages. Caroline received what she'd earned, her personal debts, her clothes, and the consequences of her actions. No alimony, no property division beyond personal items. The judge had been unambiguous about why. Her deliberate financial misconduct and the evidence of her collaboration with Graham, now Gregory, had eliminated any claim to support. Please sign where indicated, the judge instructed. Fiona slid the decree toward me, pointing to each signature line. I took the pen, feeling its weight in my hand. I remembered our wedding day. Caroline's smile, the promises we'd made. 7 years of life together, erased with each stroke of ink. I didn't hesitate, signing methodically, not looking up when I slid the document across to Caroline. Through my peripheral vision, I saw her hand shake as she took the pen. Then it happened. The breakdown Fiona had warned might come. Caroline's composure cracked, her face crumpling as she tried to sign. I can't, she sobbed, the pen dropping from her fingers. Kurt, please, I have nowhere to go. The courtroom seemed to still around her words. The judge waited, patient but firm. Her attorney whispered something in her ear, and Caroline picked up the pen again, tears streaming down her face as she signed. I kept my eyes on the table, feeling nothing but a hollow finality. The decree is hereby entered, the judge announced. You are now legally divorced. Court is adjourned. Outside on the courthouse steps, Abby squeezed my arm. It's over, Kurt. Really over. I nodded, watching as Caroline and her attorney exited through a side door. The morning sunlight caught her profile for a moment, the woman I'd once built my life around now walking away with nothing but what she'd chosen. You did well in there, Fiona said, joining us. Her voice softened. You've rebuilt yourself, Kurt. Not everyone manages that. Had good help, I said, looking between her and Abby. And good backbone, Abby added. We parted ways in the parking lot, promises to meet for dinner soon hanging in the air. The drive home felt surreal, each mile taking me further from the past 6 months and closer to whatever came next. I pulled into my driveway as evening settled over the neighborhood. The house looked different somehow, not just mine again by legal decree, but mine in a deeper way. I stood on the porch for a long moment, keys in hand, and breathed deeply. The air felt clean. My air again. Inside, I walked through each room slowly, reacquainting myself with the space that was now solely mine. I boxed up the last of Caroline's belongings that her friend had arranged to collect the following day. No mementos, no keepsakes. Clean breaks heal cleanest. Hours later, I was sitting at my kitchen table reviewing a new contract bid when headlights swept across my driveway. I looked through the window to see Caroline's car, the one her parents had helped her buy after she returned from Miami with nothing. I didn't move immediately. Part of me had been expecting this, the final, desperate appeal. I set down my papers and walked to the door just as she knocked. When I opened it, Caroline stood shivering in the cool evening air. Her makeup was smudged, her eyes red-rimmed. She wore the same clothes from court, but they seemed to hang on her now. "Kurt," she said, voice breaking. "Please. I know I don't deserve it, but I have nowhere else to go, just for tonight." I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt nothing but a quiet resolve. "You have your choices, Caroline," I said firmly. "Live with them. I'll live with mine." I shut the door. Not with a slam, not with anger. Gently, but completely. 6 months had passed like seasons changing. Not suddenly, but in a gradual shift that I barely noticed, until one day I realized the ground beneath me felt solid again. Morning had become my favorite time. I sat on the back steps of my house, just my house now, with coffee steam rising between my palms. The April air carried that particular Ohio spring coolness, the kind that promised warmth by noon but kept things honest at dawn. 3 houses down, I could hear the rhythmic sound of framing hammers as the Henderson addition took shape. One of my crews was over there, putting up walls that would stand true. I took another sip, letting the quiet settle around me. 6 months. Half a year since I'd closed that door and chosen peace over prolonged battle. The coffee was still hot when my phone buzzed. "Nick." "Morning," I said, picking up. "Did I wake you?" His voice had that wired energy it always carried, like he'd been up coding for hours already. "Been up since 5. "Contractor hours," he chuckled. "Listen, thought you'd want to know. Stiles took the plea deal yesterday." I set my mug down on the step beside me. Gregory Stiles, the man who'd called himself Graham Sterling and promised my ex-wife the world. "How long?" 7 years. Possibility of parole after 4. They got him on wire fraud, securities violations, identity theft, whole package. The prosecutor said your evidence was what locked it. I nodded, though Nick couldn't see me. "And the money?" "Gone, mostly. Recovery team found about 60,000 scattered across accounts. They'll distribute it proportionally to victims once the case formally closes. That money didn't matter much to me anymore. I'd rebuilt what was taken, one invoice, one job at a time. The business was stronger now, more contracts, better margins. Turns out focus is its own form of wealth. "Thanks for letting me know," I said. "You good?" Nick asked, the question carrying more weight than its 2 words suggested. "Yeah," I said, realizing I meant it. "I really am." After we hung up, I finished my coffee and headed inside to shower. The work pants and flannel shirt I pulled on carried the familiar scent of sawdust and laundry detergent. Simple things. Real things. My phone buzzed again as I was lacing my boots. Caroline's name appeared on the screen, again. She'd texted sporadically over the months, never quite letting go of whatever thread she thought still connected us. This time it was a photo, us at Kelly's Island 4 summers ago, smiling in the sun. Below it, her message. "I know I ruined everything. Some days I still can't believe what I did." 3 weeks ago, she'd sent, "I miss our Sunday mornings 2 months back. I'm sorry. For everything. I was blind. I never replied. Not once. What would be the point?" She rented a small room above Tina's hair and nails on the east side of town. Abby had mentioned seeing her working reception at a dentist's office. Life moves on, her choices, her consequences. I slid the phone into my pocket without responding and grabbed my keys from the hook by the door. Through the window I could see my crew's truck already pulled up at the site. Mike would be organizing materials, getting the day started right. Standing on my porch, I looked at the quiet street. The houses with their morning windows still dark, the fading stars giving way to dawn. If you'd told me a year ago I'd be standing here alone, I wouldn't have believed the peace I'd feel. I guess that's what I want you to understand. If you're where I was, betrayed, hollowed out, watching someone try to build their happiness from the ruins of yours, remember this. The best revenge isn't rage. It's removal. I set my empty mug down, locked my door, and walked to my truck. "Remove their access," I said quietly, as if you were walking beside me. "Remove their alibis. Remove them from your future." The key turned in the ignition, and the truck hummed to life. "Then lock the door," I continued, and keep your keys. I pulled away from the curb, driving toward the day's first job. In the distance, hammers kept their steady rhythm, building something new that would stand for years. The sound faded as I drove, replaced by a calm silence, the sound of a life rebuilt. I believe stories such as this find us for a reason. If this one touches you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day. In the meantime, there are 2 stories on the screen that are even better.